How's it going, guys? Welcome to my new series where I teach you how to photograph New York City neighborhoods, starting with Chinatown. In this, I'll be taking you to some classic cliche photo spots, as well as my favorite lower key locations, and teaching you how to get creative shots that not everyone and their grandma has taken. Not that your grandma isn't an excellent photographer. I'm also stoked to be partnering with Canon, testing out their mirrorless EOS M50. Very tiny, very powerful. Anyway, let's get this video going. We're now going to head onto Manhattan Bridge. We've got two main overlooks. You've got Division Street and then East Broadway, just a little further up. Now the most classic photo is just to shoot through these cracks and get the nice view. It's gorgeous. This hole right here, someone's cut a hole for photography. That should say it all for you. So I'm going to try and catch the bikers in the middle of this light. Beautiful shadow cast by them. And the umbrellas added a nice splash of color that was really fun. Our next spot is Doyle Street, which is arguably one of the most popular photo streets in New York City. In the late 1800s, this was a hot spot for Chinese gang warfare. Now it's a spot where people take their hype Instagram photos. When it rains, you have a big buildup of water right here. So to make the shot a little bit more interesting, I've got super low, caught the reflection of these buildings up here, and made a Cinemagraph. Having the vari angle LCD is really nice here because instead of lying on the wet floor to see into the screen, I can just tilt it up and lean above it casually. And if you want to learn how to make things like these, you can click the video right over here. Just 3 blocks over, there's this nice fish tank on the corner of Elizabeth and Bayard. We have our model here, Mel. So we're going to try and catch Mel and the fish just hanging out. We got the wide 22mm on. Let's see what we can do. I have an aperture of f2 right now, so I can have a nice shallow depth of field, meaning everything behind her is going to be nice and blurry. Now we're going to take a Cinemagraph of Mel. We're going to take one photo of her, and then with this same exact pose, I'm going to switch to video mode. I'm going to freeze the side on the left, have the movement the side on the right. By getting my camera really close up against the glass, I have a nice even reflection. We have some perfect symmetry, which looks beautiful. One nice thing about the flip out LCD on this camera is that when we want to get a shot where our camera is just ridiculously close to the glass, I now don't have to have my face pressed up against smelly fish. And that's definitely a major perk for me. Now here, we're going to test out the EOS M50's silent shooting mode. Now this is actually completely silent, which is amazing for taking subtle street photos when you don't want your subjects to be aware of you, or if you're just in a quiet environment. One of the best ways to get great photos is just wandering. You're going to find random stuff that you think is nice, that has great light, and this red temple is one of those things. It is an absolutely gorgeous scene. So we're going to take some Taekwondo shots of Mel. I've got a very fast shutter speed just to make sure I capture them. I'm going to frame her up in this nice gray garage. That's 10 frames per second continuous shooting. Almost impossible to miss an action shot when you have this many frames. We're here at Forsyth Market, and this is a really great photo spot because there's always a ton of action, lots of people coming through. And my recommendation when you're at a spot like this is just to post up, hang out for a little while, loiter and see what happens, because you never know what kind of interesting people will come through. It started pouring, and I just found this lady with a nice cardboard box covering her head, and I followed her for a little while. Don't be afraid to follow people, but don't follow them for too long because it gets creepy fast. Honestly, the key to good street photography is loitering. Loiter as much as possible. Right now what I'm trying to do with this shot is, I love this column, so I'm like, how can I make this more interesting? And I have another line right here, so I'm framing Mel up right in between these two lines just for some clean composition. Another thing, if you're not sure if you want to do landscape or portrait orientation, just try both and pick your favorite later. That's why we're shooting digital. Another phenomenal location just outside the borders of Chinatown is Elias Skatepark. Now there's so much action happening here for 4th of July. Fireworks going off in the park, which is a blast. I also did some 60 frames per second video testing out this camera's slow-mo, which looks solid, and you can do some high-speed shooting. Another great location to shoot around is Seward Street Park on the eastern end of Chinatown. There's such a great scene out here, lots of beautiful streets, and here's a shot I really like. We're here in Sarah Roosevelt Park. We're gonna start off with some nice street photography. Now the way I do this is I always find a nice busy area because foot traffic is super key. So what I do is I find an interesting location, say this nice looking green wall, and then I'll think, all right, how can we make it more interesting? What's another layer we could add? There's tons of people walking through. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna shoot through these fans right here to get a nice framing element going on. I'm gonna just jump through these trucks. So I'm gonna lock my focus down on where the people are walking through. And for these photos, you always wanna catch them mid-stride with their feet nice and spread apart. What separates the boys from the men is how long you're willing to wait. Sometimes a great subject walks through immediately. Sometimes you gotta shoot for 15 to 30 minutes until someone fun comes along. We're headed up to the rooftop at 50 Crown now. They're pretty mellow with photography as long as you don't go too high key. A couple tips for when you're shooting rooftops. First of all, it's impossible to take a bad shot on a roof, but if you want to make it a little extra special, I recommend first using a wide angle. You can get way more field of vision in there, more buildings, more cars, more everything, which is always awesome. Second thing, you want to look for nice reflections. Oftentimes buildings are going to be reflective, and we had a nice glass wall up there, which meant we can get good reflections off that. I was doing a little bit of video stuff, so I might make some boomerangs with the cars. When you have movement and reflections, it makes it look like the cars are actually hitting each other. It's really disorienting. It's a wild effect, and disorientation and photography go hand in hand. So I think we got some cool stuff out here. We're here at a plant store. Now, Grand Street has a ton of them. This one's on the corner of Grand and Eldridge, but you'll find a bunch of them. And plant stores are super fun to shoot just because you have tons of stuff going on, lots of bright, vibrant colors, and you have good lighting at all times of the day. To get a good mysterious look for this shoot going, I just framed Mel's eyes up in between two plant leaves. To get that perfect framing, I had to put my hand on the plant's leaves and just sort of adjust them a little bit. There's no harm, no foul. Don't kill any plants, and you'll still get some good shots. Now what I recommend is you're annoying the shopkeepers when you go in here. So either be extremely quick, buy something, or do both. Ideally both. Now that we are full of dumplings, we're gonna walk around two of my favorite streets for some nighttime photography, Canal Street and Mott. We've got a lot of incredible stuff here, lots of fun lights to look out for, and there is no specific thing you gotta shoot here. It's really just walk around until you see something interesting and make it happen. We're now gonna do some long exposure work. So we're gonna head to Chatham Square, which is also a really great community hotspot. Tons of different cars coming in every which direction, and the classic Chinatown sign. This seems like a pretty solid place to end. We've done so much today, shooting portraits, cityscapes, long exposures, action taekwondo shots, cinemagraphs, and street photography. So much fun, all in a 1 mile radius. So if you want to hit some of these spots too, I've actually created a spot map for you. Link in the description so you can check out where all these spots are. But remember, the most important thing is just to wander around and let things happen. I'm gonna keep this series going, so do me a huge solid and vote right over here which neighborhood we should shoot next. Anyway, thank you so much to Canon for partnering with me on this, and this tiny little EOS M50 has been a delight to work with, and thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you eventually. I'm gonna go wander the streets and shoot photos for a few more hours.